Welcome to the Church Sound Podcast, part of the Repurpose Network, where kingdom culture, real life, and technology intersect. I'm your host, Prentiss Thompson. What we do? We talk to real people, pastors, leaders, engineers, tech people, manufacturers, worship leaders, all about church, technology, and provide solutions for a successful Sunday morning service. You ready? It's time to take a ride. Let's go. Yes. Welcome to another edition of the Church Sound Podcast. I'm your humble host, Prentiss Thompson, and you know I always have a special guest, especially when it's two screen. When it's two screen, you know, it's always something special. But when I'm by myself, you know, I normally am by myself. But today, you know, I have a guest. I have a friend that I've known for. We were just talking before we started. At least 20 years, at least 20 years in my business. And he works for, I don't know his title, but I know is it product manager?
I don't even know my title at this point.
I don't even know.
I think it's business development, Northeast key accounts in Canada. And it might even be domestic distribution in there. It doesn't even fit on the card. It's laughable.
Okay, it's laughable. He has a long title. And please welcome to the show, Dave Roman from Universal Audio. How you doing, sir?
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Prentiss.
Hey, you know, we were talking before we started, and I flashed back to a time when I was a rep for Event Electronics, and I remember going to Dale Pro Audio in the city and going to, I forget the older gentleman's name. Oh gosh, what is
Mike Bogan?
Mike Bogan.
Yeah.
So I'll go in and he just says, "Hey, go talk to the young guy. Just go."
Sounds like something Bogey would say.
Yeah, just go talk to the young guy. And you were there with your Yankee hat, ace deuce, and
yeah.
And it was like, I said, "Hey man, can we get this plugged up? And is this working? Anything I need?" And he was like, "No, I got you. He was just like, Mister knew everything, man. So it kind of like full circle, like we're talking, which is kind of normal that we kind of talk gear, which is really kind of normal. But hey, man, thanks for being on the show, man.
Awesome, thank you.
So from rep to rep, we all have our stories and how we got into this side of the business. How did it happen for you?
As an actual rep or
as
an actual rep? I mean, for me, I was the again, many titles, many hats as per usual, I guess, in this business. But at Dale, I was the product specialist, technical support, demo guy, you name it, right? And anything that had to do with tech, at least on the recording studio, broadcast, post-production side, and whatnot. I went from there to I worked with Group One Distribution, who's the distributor for Digico consoles, as well as Blue Sky speakers. At the time, they needed a broadcast technical salesperson. So because they were also distributing Younger Audio, which is loudness normalization and everything. That was when the Calm Act was like a new thing.
Right.
RTW meters, and I feel like I'm forgetting something. But anyway, so they needed a technical salesperson. So after about, I don't even know how long, 9-10 years or more at Dale, I did that with Group One. Ultimately what happened is a friend of mine called me. It was actually a friend of mine calls and says, "Hey, you know, UA is looking for someone in the New York area, and you should call this guy." And I was like, "I'm not a rep. I'm a tech." You know, like, I don't sell things. I wouldn't know what to do with that. And you know, he was just kind of like, you're a fool if you don't call this guy. You need to call him. I'm like, all right, I'll call. And thank goodness I did. Is really what it comes down to. I mean, I most people had said this to me in the past, but when I eventually started interviewing for Universal Audio, uh, the, my boss basically was like, I know you're telling me you're a tech and you're a product specialist, and obviously I see that in your resume. But when I see that in your resume and you explain to me what you've done for the past, I don't even know, 14, 15 years or more, whatever it was, even at that point, it was like, you're a salesperson. You're a sales, you can do this. The only thing that you haven't done is at the end, you haven't actually had like to sit down and ask someone for an order, and he's like, can you do that? And I was like, I think I'm ready to do that. Yeah. And then, and specifically the reason I think I was ready, like, I don't know that I would have been ready to do that for any company. I thought I was ready to do that for Universal Audio because I felt like it's a unique company in the sense that they make hardware, they make software, and both of those worlds in particular with UA are incredibly interesting. I like talking about audio. You know that. We've known each other for so long. We always end up talking about audio, like most audio folks do. And with UA, it's like, if you want to talk analog, we can talk analog. We do that. And we've been doing it since 1958. You know what I mean? So it's great that you can lean on that history and that, pedigree, right? But if you want to talk software, yeah, we do that too. And then when you start talking software, the really cool part of talking software, specifically plugins in our case, it's like, we're not just talking about UA stuff anymore. We're talking
Right.
about all kinds of stuff that either we've done the emulation for it, like, but we didn't actually make the analog piece of gear, right? Like, so I can still talk. Like, I used to love talking about, Manley gear, Avalon gear, whatever at Dale Pro Audio, right? And when I did the Group One thing, I wasn't doing that anymore. I was just talking about those like 4 lines.
Right.
And then I realized, wait, at UA, I can talk about massive passives and varimoves again. I can talk about, API gear. I because we make those plugins.
Right.
So it's like, it doesn't matter that it's not material. All the concepts are the same, right? So it's like, I can talk about proportional bandwidth on API 550Bs again, just all that nerdy stuff that we like to talk about, and basically it was like, this will never get old. And that's why I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready for a company like UA to be an actual sales rep.
But you were like one of the only people that I knew that could really talk about the components, the metals they used. Like, you could talk about stuff, and I'll be like, "What? How do you even know that?"
I appreciate that. Now I'm embarrassed.
No, I mean, it's a compliment.
No, I know. I appreciate it. Look, I've always been curious about, I mean, to me, I'm always curious about stuff in general, and certainly this is the career path that we chose. We chose it for a reason. We fell in love with it. We're passionate about it, and in my eyes, I always just want to keep learning. I mean, and I get curious about things. Like, I talk with various states of people in the business as far as like their experience level, right? So I end up uh talking sometimes to folks, and like, well, in particular with Digico, I talked to a lot of live sound engineers. And at the time, this is probably about 11 years ago now, at the time, a lot of the live sound engineers were like saying like, yeah, I want to mix at 96. And, now it's like 96K is like whatever. It's almost
Right.
like, it's like the new 44.1 really. But,
Yeah.
but at the time it was like, really? But the thing is, like, I would ask them why. And the funny part was, and I was almost kind of like doing it as my own kind of like social experiment. I would ask them like, well, why are you doing it? And most of them didn't know why. It was just a higher number.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my point is, sometimes I meet like, a lot of, I'm not the young buck anymore. So I'll meet the young buck at a store or whatever at a training. And, they kind of ask me like, all right, like, what was your path like? Cause they might want to take a similar path or whatever, a path of their own, but they want to know how to walk that path. Right. And one of the things I tell them is like, ask questions, maybe not necessarily of a person, but even just ask questions in your own mind. Like, why is this? You know what I mean? So it's like, that a CD spec is 16-bit 44.1. Almost everybody knows that. But have you ever asked why? Look it up,
Right.
and some of that stuff, maybe you'll purge it from your mind and you'll never think about it ever again. But it's just good practice, in my opinion, to look something up, try to understand it. Why? Just why? So okay, you want to do 96. Why? Do you know
Right.
what it means? Do you know what the potential pitfalls of that or the potential advantages of that are? And just why? Why? And that's always something that's intrigued me.
That that really speaks to who I know you as.
That's
It
funny.
really speaks to who I know you as. So, in the realm of hardware,
Yes.
what was, I mean, I know this for my listeners, Universal Audio, I know Bill Putnam, 1958. What were the first hardware products that you guys did as plugins that were probably most popular in the 50s and 60s on?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I probably the originals, yeah, probably like the 1176 and the LA2A. The LA3A probably followed after that. I mean, although that precedes my employment with the company by a ways, but I know those have been around for quite some time. And what I can tell you, uh, as far as like kind of history of the company, well, as you said, Bill Putnam Sr. founded the company 1958. Uh, but if we fast forward way past all that, and you land somewhere in the 90s, his son, Bill Putnam Jr., was going to Stanford University. And they were working on stuff like really early um, emulations of I think they were doing more like musical instruments or something like that, like anyway, the light bulb went off in his head, like, wait a second, if we're emulating this stuff, what if I tried to emulate some of my father's old designs? So he was actually able to get the company name back, because for a while back in the 70s, I believe, and even beyond that, JBL owned it, and then I guess maybe even, I'm not sure exactly what how that all works. I'm not a lawyer, but he was able to get the name back, and in order to fund getting to figure out how to do this stuff and get the company off the ground, he reissued the hardware because he had his father's original drawings. So he brought back the original 1176 LN. He
Really?
brought
That's
back
how it started?
That's how
That?
it started. That's how he funded the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow.
He went back to like probably pulled him out of a drawer or, whatever. And, cause he still had all the original designs. And in typical UA fashion, uh, he, first of all most of the analog stuff, definitely the 1176 and the LA2A, but most of the analog gear that we still make today is still handmade in California. So in the case of the 1176 and the LA2A, when he was going to restart that to build up the funds for the company, he had to go back out to like some of the suppliers that he used to go to for certain things,
Mm.
transformers, electro-optical cells, things like that. and he had to see if, first of all, they were still around, and great, they
Correct.
are. Hey, we want to start this up again. And I know, like in the case of I believe it was the L-op for the LA2A, the samples that they kept getting like were not quite right, and that's something like you have to get that right.
Yeah.
That's the heart.
Character.
That's
Yeah.
the heart of the
Yeah.
beast when it comes to
Yep.
the LA2A. It's got to be just got to be dead on. So he actually had to go to the factory and show them like, no, this is what you're doing wrong. Like, let's get this right. And eventually they did, and they sold, sold 1176s and LA2As, and that was able to get the whole plugin thing started. Which, same deal. I'm pretty sure the first plugins were probably 1176s.
I remember them being 1176s,
Yeah,
LA2As. I remember because studio guys. That's the first thing you see when you walk into a real room. When you walk
definitely,
into a real room, it's like that's the pass through. That's
absolutely.
the sound.
Yep. A friend of mine was building, well, I'll tell you, Mark Christensen, who owns Engine Room Audio downtown in Manhattan, this goes back a ways. Another guy I know for a long time. He was speccing his room out a long time ago. And he was like, and this is way before I worked at UA. This is at Dale, right? And he was like, so I need to get some outboard. Why shouldn't I just get two 6176 channel strips instead of spending the extra money and getting the 1176s? And I was like, well, you got a good point. You'd get the two 610 mic preamps, you get two 1176s, you can still stereo link them if you need to, you know what I mean? But, and this, again, kind of shows the time frame or whatever. I was like, but if you ever get like, an article or something in Mix Magazine, you're going to put an ad out, even on your own website or whatever. People that are going to book your room expect to see those big VUs with the
Right.
big buttons that you push in, and it's you don't want to have to try and have that conversation like this is the same thing. It just doesn't quite look
Mhm.
like it. Like, but
Right.
inside, nope,
Right.
nope, no. You expect to see
Right.
two rack spaces, that
Hmm.
big rectangular VU, the
Yep.
push buttons, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. That's
That's it.
because that's what it is, and it's been that way for how many decades?
Yeah. Yeah. Like over 60 years. So that's a testament to like the design. And the thing about it that really amazed me is that even though this was he designed these in the 50s and you can use it on so many different styles of music, the sound is the sound.
Oh yeah, yeah,
The sound is the sound. And that's why, when you walk into a room, you see 1176 or you see any a myriad of the other products. And then when the plugins came out and they were so spot on,
yeah,
and then the variations of the older ones to the newer ones,
yeah.
really made a difference in the character. And I liked how you guys did the detail on the front panels of the older ones, like with the
Oh yeah,
um
blue stripe. Yeah,
blue stripe. So it was like, okay, it made it familiar for like those old veteran engineers, and then for the newer guys to go, oh, I never got to play with that because I was never exposed to that,
yeah,
and now I can utilize it how I want to use it
yeah.
and still have that same character.
Definitely. And I'll tell you one thing that's like, how when you're a sales rep and you're doing trainings and talking to people, and every now and then you kind of like, am I just being like an all salesperson about this and just like, or what? So it's nice to get confirmation from someone when they tell you like, hey, like, what you said, it's real. So what I used to tell people, I used to go to a lot of stores and whatever,
Yeah,
and do
I
trainings.
know.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the folks you would train would be like, hey, how can I learn more? I want to learn more about just whatever, about the plugins. I want to dive deeper. And I used to tell them, I'll tell you how you learn more. Download our plugins manual. The plugins manual, if you've never seen the plugins manual, it is so there's so much information in there, because again, when we do a plugin, it's like it may as well not be a plugin, right? We are absolutely going for the kitchen sink, right? Like and it doesn't, if it's something beautiful in there, we're going to do the most accurate emulation of it that's possible. Anyway, I used to tell people, like, that's what you need to do. Download the manual, download. So anyway, I was talking to this engineer once in somewhere in Canada. It was I think it was in Toronto. And he was telling me the story that he's a relatively young guy. And he basically grew up on plugins, loves our plugins. And he found himself at some point, he's moving up in his career, right? He finds himself in Los Angeles at Dr. Dre's studio, and he's about to work. I don't remember if he was working on. I don't think he was working on Dre's thing, but he was like
in his room.
Dre was the producer in his room, So
Right.
it's like, and he, of course, like, it's a big deal for him. He gets there early, nobody's there, and he's looking around and he's starting like, oh man, like it starts to hit him, like this, like the excitement of like, this is a big step in my career, but also the nervousness starts to hit him. Like, I'm in like a legit room right now, about to do a legit project with like real artists, real, this is real. This is happening.
Yeah.
Right. And then he gets really nervous because he starts looking around the room and he's like, yo, I've never even used this gear before. And then he realizes, yes, I have. Because it's all the plugins. And he realized, because he knows the plugins, he knows the real gear. It really doesn't make a difference other than the fact that you're reaching out and you're grabbing the knobs, but it behaves the same way. And as soon as he realized that, he got real comfortable, because he was like, I know the plugins. This is just, all I need to do is I got to patch this and I got to reach out and grab it. And, that immediately, like, so he went from like having this like panic to realizing, no, I'm going to be okay. So it was funny just to hear him say that, because it was confirmation of what I've been saying. Like, you want to learn about the real stuff, read about the plugins, and
right.
the knowledge is going to transfer.
Right. Which kind of leads me to, we can go down the rabbit hole of the interfaces and all that stuff, which is amazing. But I was on the website, and this was sparked my phone call with you, my text with you, just reaching out. I was like, microphones? And that's the first thing that popped in my head. I was like, microphones? Because the first thing I saw was the broadcast mic.
Yes.
And I remember I texted you or something. I was like, when did this happen? Like, what's going on? And then just like, I think last month, I looked and I was like, wait a minute. It's a family of microphones? Like, what's going on? So please enlighten me. How did we get here with microphones?
Yeah, there are a good amount of microphones at this point. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 8 at this point. We have, to give the background, sort of 2 parallel paths, if you will, with microphones.
With the universe?
Yeah. So at one point, we were able to purchase the Bach microphones.
Okay.
Which, if you don't know Bach microphones, I'm speaking to you through a Sound Deluxe E195, which is the same as the current Bach 187, except that one is colored green. But yeah, all the old Sound Deluxe microphones, Bach audio microphones. We purchased the company, and we are currently making 3 of the models that existed at the time, the Bach 167, the Bach 251, and the Bach 187. Those are all handmade, just ridiculously, boutique microphones, basically,
Right.
like, and yeah, look gorgeous, sound great, just they are what they are. If you know Bach microphones, that's what these are. It's the same thing. They just have a UA badge on them in addition to the Bach name on them. They're a different color, but that was kind of like, I think it was more of an opportunity that presented itself, and we were like, yeah, let's do that, because this is the real deal, and it shares kind of some of the same legacy of our
Right.
stuff, right?
I got it. Makes sense.
The other path was there was a company known as Townsend Labs, and they made a modeling microphone, the TL22, which is just incredible technology. At that point, the assets for that company were also available for purchase, and we looked at that like, yes, this is impressive, and we can continue this path and work with this kind of technology. So we started out by basically, if you know the Townsend Labs TL22, the UA DLX, UA Sphere DLX microphone it's the exact same mic. Then we decided to make a lower cost version of that. Comes with less emulations out of the box, although there is a way to expand those emulations. Doesn't support the stereo mode, blah, blah, blah. But we came out with a lower cost version just to give people a choice. Like, you can't quite fit the big one in the budget. Maybe you don't need these features. You grab the LX. But other than that, they both function on the same premise. They are mic emulations. And as you can probably see in front of, the stuff in front of me, I've been a mastering engineer for over 15 years at this point. So microphones, I respect microphones, and I think there are a lot of cool microphones out there, but, I don't use microphones in the studio anymore. There's no such thing as a microphone in mastering. So to me,
True.
it's like, it doesn't do the same thing that an EQ or a compressor does for me as far as, just personal interest. But the Sphere mic emulations, that's like it what it brings to the table is just so different that you have to rethink. It's like you got to recalibrate your brain as to the applications of it, right? And anyway, so we had the DLX, we had the LX, and then we came out with the standard series of microphones, which is like what you're talking about. This guy. This is the first one from the standard series, which is the SD1, which is a large diaphragm dynamic mic intended for, really anything. I mean, it's kind of known as a sort of broadcast podcast kind of microphone, but, you can sing into this. You can shove this in front of a guitar amp or whatever. It's a large diaphragm dynamic mic. But we came out with the standard series of microphones, and as usual, the way we do things, nothing is quite the way it seems in the beginning, because we came out with this microphone, but the intention was to also support these microphones with modeling technology. So it took about a year or so, I guess, maybe a year and change, for the modeling software to be ready. But, anyone who owns one of these can register it and get that modeling software. So, for example, let me just show you, and then we can talk about, what it is and what it does and everything. When you, like I said, you buy one of these, you register it using the UA Connect, you choose it as a source. And I don't have it hooked up at the moment. We can do that in a moment. But you can make this sound like a vintage ribbon microphone. You can make it sound like, well, I don't know if I should say what these are or not, but
I'm familiar with they look
those
like.
that know will know.
Those that know will know. I would not mention the model names or numbers of
Exactly.
companies, but
Yeah. So basically, you can make this sound like, any of these, or just don't use this plugin and you don't have to do any of that, right? Um,
So let me ask you a question before you jump.
yes.
The so you can use it. Is it? Do you have to have the interface, the Apollo, or to utilize it, or is it like standalone? Because it's an input.
That the answer to that question is multifaceted, as is typical with anything universal audio. I told you the beauty of this company is I never run out of things to talk about. Uh, the answer to your question, whether you're talking about one of the sphere microphones or you're talking about the standard series of microphones, no, you do not need an Apollo. It is There are many advantages to using an Apollo,
Obviously, yes.
um, which but you absolutely do not need an Apollo uh, to make it work. The extension of that is, and here's where this is where I was saying, you have to recalibrate your mind. These are mic emulations, but like I said, you don't need an Apollo. You can just use a 2-channel mic pre. Or a single channel mic pre, depending. With the spheres, you need 2 channels. The accuracy of the models and everything require a front and rear capsule, so that it's actually behaving the way it would and picking up
Gotcha.
everything in the room and everything. We'll get to why in just a second, but the standards are all just mono microphones. So you don't need an Apollo. You just need some kind of a mic preamp, and obviously you need to, you're either listening to it in real time or you're capturing it. Chances are you're capturing it. So the software I just showed you, you do not need that software to capture it.
Okay.
So for example, let's say I don't know, let's grab an SP1 since we already grabbed the SD one. Let's say I want to record I want to record the church choir, this, on a Friday rehearsal or something like that. I'm not bringing the whole rig, even though these days you probably can, because it's just a laptop and an interface, and things have
Right.
gotten unbelievably portable. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that you can't, right? And you just got one of those little task cams or Zoom handheld or something like that that's got a couple of XLRs on it, right? So you take your little Zoom, you take your stereo pair of SP1s, you plug them into the 2 mic preamps, you set it up however you're going to set it up, whatever, your choice of mic technique, right? You record it. That's it. Cool. Now you get back to the studio. You dump that over into your Pro Tools rig or whatever it is you use, right? These mics like to roll on the surface. And you listen back. Okay. You recorded it. Great. But what's cool is, let me go back to this window. This is a lot harder to share than Zoom, if you ask me. So we got, let's change so we choose our SP1, right? And I can now choose in Pro Tools. I'm going to instantiate this plugin, right? In Pro Tools or Logic, whatever it is you use. And now I'm going to pick which microphone I want this to sound like. I don't have to do it in the recording. I'm doing it in the mix. Additionally, I can say, ooh, this microphone was slightly off axis. I can change that.
Oh, man.
There's a little too much proximity effect. I can change that. Or add some proximity effect. If you had a vocalist that was kind of doing this kind of thing, right? You can change that. I want to do the, low cut filter. You can do that. All in the mix.
Wow.
Right? Which, exactly. Wow is where it comes in. Or you can just say, you know what, it sounded fine the way it was, and just not use the plugin. That works too, because they're great sounding microphones. But the point of them is if you want to take it a step further, which is these emulations, right? And all of this can be done in the mix. which means that it starts to open up all sorts of possibilities when you start considering those possibilities are actually something, that can be done and couldn't be done before. Like you could say, all right, like let's say, let me think. Yeah, I don't know. Let's say we had an acoustic guitar, right? And you had a single microphone in front of it, or maybe you had two microphones. I don't know, whatever. Even if you had a single microphone, you could just copy that track, and now you got two tracks. But you could say on one track you want it to sound more like an 80, right? See what I'm going? And then the
Yeah,
other
kind of
track could
reverse the
be,
polarity
a
and
451. You can do whatever you want. You can, and this one will have less proximity